Antioch Peverell. Antioch Peverell came from an ancient pureblood wizarding family and was already a skilled and powerful wizard. But like every wizard drama story goes, he needed more. The Elder Wand enters the chat. Now, Dumbledore actually believed Antioch created it himself, but the legend tells it differently. Around 1214, Antioch bargained with death for the ultimate weapon, a wand that could win any fight against any opponent forever. Death gave him exactly what he asked for, which is always a bad sign. So, once Antioch got the most powerful weapon of the wizarding world, he tested it immediately. He tracked down a wizard he had a grudge against, wiped the floor with him in a single duel, and spent the rest of the evening telling every stranger in the inn about his shiny new super weapon. Basically waving a bag of gold in a room full of thieves and then falling asleep upstairs. By morning, Antioch was dead. Someone crept in during the night, cut his throat, and walked off with the wand. Total time as the most powerful wizard alive, roughly one drunken evening. His killer vanished into the night with the wand. Who it was, nobody knows for sure. But there's a theory, and it leads straight to the next name on this list, Emeric the Evil. Around 1420, Emeric the Evil had turned medieval Britain into his personal hunting ground. Emeric was a medieval dark wizard described as exceptionally aggressive, which, given the competition on this list, is saying something. First-year Hogwarts students study him in History of Magic, where they regularly confuse him with Emeric the Oddball, a harmless eccentric who wore a jellyfish on his head. Emeric wielded the Elder Wand to terrorize the English countryside for years, amassing followers and cursing anything that looked at him sideways. Nobody knows exactly how Emeric got the Elder Wand. Some believe he was the one who killed Antioch Peverell, the wand's original owner, making him the first thief in a very long chain. Others say Antioch was already dead, and the wand passed through unnamed hands before reaching Emeric. The only thing every version agrees on is that somebody died for it. Around 1432, a wizard with the spectacularly absurd name of Egbert the Egregious challenged Emeric to a straight duel. One catastrophic exchange of curses later, years of unchecked cruelty ended in a single evening. The wand moved on without looking back. His killer took the wand, earned himself a ridiculous title, and then did the last thing anyone expected, Egbert the Egregious. So, around 1432, Egbert the Egregious had just become the wizard who ended Emeric's reign, and the magical world braced for whatever came next. Egbert the Egregious was a dark wizard of the Middle Ages. By all accounts, he had a terrible reputation, and honestly, his nickname says it directly. Egregious literally means outrageously bad. Among the Elder Wand's known masters, Egbert stands out as an exception, though not the only one. More on that later, because he won the wand in a straight duel face to face. What came next was almost nothing. Egbert's time with the wand left strangely little trace in the historical record, but Egbert might be the only owner in the wand's long bloody history who held the Elder Wand and found it boring. What he did accomplish accidentally was proof of concept. The wand could be taken through a fair duel. Every ambitious wizard on the continent took notes, and from this point forward, the Elder Wand attracted a very specific kind of hunter. Scholars, warlords, and power-obsessed maniacs who saw it as the ultimate shortcut. The next owner fell squarely into the first category, Godelot. By the late 1400s, the Elder Wand belonged to someone who, for once, opened a book before opening fire. Godelot was described as an unpleasant character, a medieval dark wizard who studied forbidden magic the way other people study languages. He collected curses, cataloged dark spells, and yet even he refused to write about Horcruxes, considering the ritual too dark even by his standards. He treated the wand like a research partner, calling it his most wicked and subtle friend in writing. The relationship produced Magic Most Evil, a catalog of the most dangerous spells and curses known at the time, and still one of the most restricted books in wizarding history. The Elder Wand fed him knowledge, and Godelot fed it obsession. For a while, the arrangement worked. Fun fact, Godelot is the only recorded owner who tried to document what the Elder Wand actually does, rather than just swinging it at enemies. His own son decided that waiting for a natural inheritance was overrated. Hereward locked Godelot in the cellar of his own home and left him there to die. The wand's most studious owner was murdered by the one person he presumably trusted, Hereward. So, around 1490, Hereward walked away from his father's house with the Elder Wand and a family legacy that could not have looked more cursed if it tried. The wand accepted him anyway, which says plenty about how little loyalty has ever meant to it. According to Dumbledore, he was genuinely mad. Whether the madness came before or after growing up in a house full of dark magic experiments, nobody knows. Either way, he decided he wanted the wand more than he wanted a father. So, after he got away with the wand, Hereward almost disappeared from the record. For someone holding the most powerful wand ever created, his historical footprint is almost insulting. One brutal inheritance, then silence. What happened to him is anyone's guess. The pattern suggests another wizard eventually killed him for the wand, but the record gives us no name, no date, and no clean version of the story. The Elder Wand vanished from the record again, drifting through decades of missing history and probably leaving a few bodies nobody bothered to document. When it resurfaced in the 1500s, the wand had found someone who treated dark magic less like a hobby and more like a business. Barnabas Deverell. Barnabas Deverell picked up the Elder Wand in the 1500s and immediately made it everyone else's problem. He used the wand to carve out a reputation as one of the most feared figures in Britain, gathering followers and crushing opposition. Barnabas was a dark wizard who had zero interest in keeping a low profile. He's the one who gave the wand the name Eldrin Wand, an old word for elderwood. The Elder Wand had several names over the centuries, but Barnabas was the first owner to actually name it publicly. The man wanted everyone to know what he was holding. Deverell built a network of dark loyalists, waged open campaigns against rival wizards, and generally made the English magical community a terrible place to live. Honestly, the man treated magical tyranny like a full-time profession, with structure, staff, and zero remorse. The Elder Wand served as both crown and executioner's axe during his reign, and for a while Deverell seemed untouchable. But the wand's favorite lesson has always been patience. Deverell was eventually hunted down and killed by a wizard named Loxias. By the early 1600s, the Elder Wand belonged to Loxias, a dark warlord who turned violence into a governing philosophy. He launched what survivors later called the Wars of Loxias, decades of open warfare across Europe, dueling and executing anyone who questioned his authority. His reputation grew so monstrous that rivals stopped using his name entirely, whispering the Wand Lord instead. Translation: this man scared people so badly they invented a title to avoid speaking to him directly. Centuries before Voldemort made name avoidance fashionable, Loxias was already running the playbook. His campaign fed on the Elder Wand's power, every curse amplified, every public execution turned into a spectacle. Under Loxias, the Elder Wand went from rumor to a recognized symbol of total dominance across the continent. But as always, someone showed up with a better strategy. Loxias was overthrown, and his reign collapsed in a storm of curses that reportedly cracked castle walls for miles. The problem is the story of who actually defeated him split almost immediately, and what followed was the strangest chapter in the wand's history. 2 names, 1 mystery, and 0 answers. Arcus, Livius. Sometime around 1670, the Elder Wand trail goes cold. After Loxias fell, plenty of wizards rushed to claim they were the one who killed him, because killing the most feared warlord in Europe meant becoming the Elder Wand's next master. That kind of bragging rights attracted a crowd, but out of all the names thrown around, only 2 stuck in the historical record: Arcus and Livius. Almost nothing is known about either of them, who they were, where they came from, and what they did with the wand. Dumbledore himself admitted he had no idea which one actually did it, and joked that it might have been Loxias' own mother. So, who really took down the Wand Lord? If you've got a theory, drop it in the comments below. For nearly 200 years after that, the Elder Wand disappeared from documented history entirely. When the trail picked up again in the late 1800s, the wand had landed somewhere nobody expected, and with an owner who had zero interest in pointing it at people: Emeric Gregorovitch. By the late 1800s, the Elder Wand had found its way to Emeric Gregorovitch, a master wand maker based in Eastern Europe. For the first time in centuries, the wand's owner had no interest in conquest. Gregorovitch wanted to reverse engineer it, to crack the secret of its power, and replicate it in his own designs. He spent years experimenting on the wand, studying its core, its wood, and its response to different spells. The research was meticulous. The security was not. Gregorovitch let it slip that he possessed a wand beyond compare, which in the wizarding world is an open invitation for someone to come take it. Near the end of the 19th century, that someone arrived. A young blonde thief broke into Gregorovitch's workshop at night, silent, precise, and terrifyingly gifted. One stunning spell later, the intruder was gone, and so was the wand. Gregorovitch caught a glimpse of the thief's face as he leapt from the window, a face that would haunt him for the rest of his life and eventually cost him his life. That thief was Gellert Grindelwald. By 1899, the Elder Wand was in the hands of a teenage Gellert Grindelwald. Over the next 4 decades, he'd prove exactly why that was a catastrophically bad thing for everyone else. The Elder Wand made him unbeatable in a duel, and word travels fast when nobody who fights you walks away. Grindelwald brought something no previous owner had: charisma, vision, and patience all at once. He preached unity between wizards and freedom from secrecy, wrapping authoritarian ideology in the language of liberation. His slogan, "For the greater good," convinced thousands that Muggle subjugation was somehow progressive. By the 1940s, Grindelwald had ignited the global wizarding war, reshaping magical politics across continents. He built a fortress called Nurmengard to lock up his enemies. Well, spoiler, he spent the rest of his life in it. In 1945, the one person Grindelwald couldn't manipulate finally confronted him: Albus Dumbledore, former best friend, intellectual equal, and the only wizard alive who understood Grindelwald completely, met him in what's still called the greatest duel of all time. When the smoke cleared, Grindelwald was defeated, and locked inside the very fortress he'd built for others. He'd spend the next 53 years there, until a noseless dark wizard showed up looking for answers about a certain wand. But hold on, rewind 19 years. Someone already defeated Grindelwald before Dumbledore did, and it wasn't some legendary dark wizard hunter. It was Newt Scamander. In 1926, Grindelwald was hiding inside Makusa, disguised as the American Auror Percival Graves. After a confrontation in a New York subway station, Graves turned on Makusa itself, and Newt Scamander stepped in. He released the swooping evil to block Graves' spells, hit him with a binding spell that brought him to his knees, and Tina Goldstein summoned the dropped wand with Accio. Then Newt cast Revelio, and Graves' face transformed into Grindelwald's. By every rule of wand allegiance, the Elder Wand's loyalty should have shifted to Newt that night. Grindelwald was defeated, subdued, disarmed, and dragged off in front of the entire Makusa leadership. And as Harry Potter would prove decades later, you don't need to physically hold the Elder Wand to become its master. You just need to beat the wizard who owns it. That makes Newt Scamander the Elder Wand's forgotten master, owner for 19 years without ever knowing it. Grindelwald kept wielding the wand across Europe, but if its full loyalty belonged to a magizoologist in a blue coat, that might explain more than the history books admit. The real transfer came later, when a very specific wizard finally stopped avoiding the fight: Albus Dumbledore. From 1945 to 1997, the Elder Wand belonged to Albus Dumbledore, and for 52 years the wand served wisdom instead of war. He defended Hogwarts, dueled dark wizards, and performed magic so advanced that even Voldemort avoided fighting him directly. Dumbledore managed what every previous owner had failed at. He wielded absolute power without letting it define him. The catch? Dumbledore understood exactly what he was holding. He knew the wand's history, every murdered owner, every stolen allegiance. And he spent decades planning to break the cycle. His strategy was elegant: die undefeated. If no one conquered him, the wand's power would die with him. He arranged his own death with Severus Snape, a mercy killing to spare Draco Malfoy from becoming a murderer. On paper, perfect. In practice, the plan had a single devastating flaw that Dumbledore either missed or accepted as a necessary risk. On the night of the Astronomy Tower, Dumbledore's plan failed before Snape even entered the scene. Someone else got there first: Draco Malfoy. In 1997, Draco Malfoy, pale and sick with fear, disarmed Dumbledore at the top of the Astronomy Tower. He couldn't bring himself to kill. The plan was never his. But Expelliarmus sealed a contract Draco never understood. The Elder Wand's loyalty transferred to him instantly. He never held it, never touched it, and spent the following months having no idea he was technically the most powerful wizard in Britain. The wand sat in Dumbledore's tomb, and Draco went home to a house full of Death Eaters. None of them had any idea they were living with the Elder Wand's rightful owner. Draco's ownership lasted about 9 months until Harry Potter grabbed his wand during a rescue at Malfoy Manor, and the Elder Wand quietly changed hands for the last time. Draco never found out. Meanwhile, someone far more dangerous was digging up Dumbledore's grave: Voldemort. In 1998, Lord Voldemort tracked the Elder Wand to its last known owner, Grindelwald, still locked in Nurmengard after 53 years. Now, what happened next depends on how you consumed your Harry Potter. If you read the books, Grindelwald kept his mouth shut. He knew Dumbledore had the wand, but refused to say a word, and Voldemort killed him on the spot. If you only watched the films, yeah, your version is a little more relaxed. Grindelwald just told him everything, and Voldemort walked away like he got directions at a gas station. Either way, Voldemort got what he needed. He cracked open Dumbledore's tomb and pulled the Elder Wand from a dead man's hand. hands. But the wand had other plans. Turns out stealing a wand from a corpse doesn't transfer allegiance, defeating its master does. And Voldemort had the wrong man on his list. He murdered Severus Snape in the Shrieking Shack, convinced that killing Dumbledore's killer would complete the chain. But the wand's loyalty had already left Snape's orbit entirely. It belonged to a Malfoy boy, and then to Harry Potter. Every spell Voldemort cast with the Elder Wand worked at a fraction of its power. In the Great Hall, when he raised it for the final killing curse against Harry, the wand recognized its actual master standing across from him. The curse rebounded, and the Elder Wand killed the man holding it, ending both Voldemort and a bloodline of violence stretching back to 1214. Harry Potter. So, in 1998, Harry Potter stood in the wreckage of Hogwarts holding a wand that had outlived every person who'd ever carried it. He'd won it the same way he'd survived most things, accidentally, reluctantly, and without any idea it was happening at the time. When he'd grabbed Draco's wand at Malfoy Manor weeks earlier, the Elder Wand's allegiance had quietly shifted to him. There was no ceremony, and Harry wasn't even fighting for the Elder Wand. After the war, Harry did something no previous owner had managed. He returned the Elder Wand to Dumbledore's tomb, ending the bloodline of masters permanently. Unless you only watched the films, in which case he just snapped it in half and yeeted it off a bridge like a candy wrapper. Either way, the curse ended. For the first time since 1214, the Elder Wand's story closed without a murder. Centuries of theft and betrayal, and it took a boy who never wanted power to finally let the wand rest. Honestly, that might be the most magical part. Now, let's talk about how every legendary wizard and witch actually died. That's your next lesson here at Stickman Hogwarts. Click now before Voldemort finds out he's on the list.